What if GOODRA was in Gen 1 OU? Now, I'll be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do for today's video, but then someone in my Discord server mentioned GOODRA, and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. We have Dragonite, but Dragonite is a flying dragon type. How would a pure dragon type with insanely high special defense fare? I was curious, so here we are. And this is also why I cannot stress enough, you absolutely should join the Discord server, because I'm probably going to do your favorite Pokemon in a video anyways, make a video on it, but being in the server, you are exponentially more likely for me to actually look at the Pokemon, think about it, and get interested. Not to mention you can just have a full-on conversation with me and the other members, which again could probably pique my interest even further. But enough about that. Let's actually look at GOODRA. And when the lowest stat is 70, aka Tauros' special, yeah, that's when you know that this is going to be an insanely good Pokemon. Excellent HP, the same attack as Tauros. Speed is ironically really good for a super bulky Pokemon and a super offensively good Pokemon. It's faster than Cloyster, which, as you can imagine, yeah, that's a big deal. And even if it's 110 special instead of 150, that's still great. It can still mean that you can stand up to the Pokemon that are strong against you. Because unlike other dragons that I've covered on the series, like Garchomp, Salamence, or just quad weak Pokemon like Landorus or Gliscor, GOODRA is just a pure dragon type. And while in most generations, that usually means that it's always kind of lacking compared to the other pseudo legendaries, here it's actually a really good benefit because you don't just immediately die to any ice move. Not to mention, it's just interesting in general, because you have a really good resistance to water, which is good against Slowbro, but it's also kind of weird, because fire and grass resistances don't matter too much. To no one's surprise, the electric resistance is huge. It means that you can completely wall Jolteon, and while theoretically Zapdos can harm you with Drill Peck, you have Blizzard, so Zapdos doesn't stay in either. But the water one's kind of weird to me, because Charmander will just go for Blizzard anyways, and while Slowbro will only hit you with Surf. I actually don't know how much like Surf would do at max special. I actually might have to test this out, because I didn't bother making a Slowbro replay, but now I'm curious. But either way, since we looked at the moveset and the typing, which, even though Ice is a big problem, I would still argue it's a good typing in Gen 1, let's actually look at the moves. I'm pretty sure Acid Armor is a move in Gen 1, but even if it is, it's just not worth it. You don't need to like make yourself bulkier, you are just good enough just killing everything. Wizard is probably the move I would imagine it would be the most common, but I could be wrong because GOODRA can hit very hard both physically and specially, and he just has a lot of coverage, so it's up to you. Body Slam is always nice and consistent. Counter exists, but don't use it. Earthquake, Fire Blast, Ice Beam if you want to preserve power points, but I imagine that's not really worth it. Rest could potentially work, because you're pretty bulky, so you could get away with it. Up to you. Rock Slide isn't really worth it, because you also have Thunderbolt, which means the only Pokemon that would be weak to Rock, aka Cloyster or Zapdos, you already have good enough coverage with just Bulk Beam coverage, which obviously would be better than EQ Rock Slide coverage, at least in my opinion. I can't really think of anyone else that would really disagree with that. Toxic is useless. And then you have Hyper Beam, which could be good, but I don't know, because he has a lot of other good moves too. And maybe like, this is what I personally would go with, at least for a standard set, with Blizzard, Thunderbolt, and then maybe Earthquake, and then Hyper Beam. Obviously, there's a lot of different moves you can use, but I think this is just where GOODRA really shines. It has a move that can devastate pretty much everything in the format. If you want a GOODRA that specifically counters Tauros, you got Blizzard and Fire Blast. You want one that can like harm Chansey, you got Earthquake and Hyper Beam. You're really scared about like Cloyster or Starmie, you got Thunderbolt. So, it's just... Actually, now that I think about it, I think Blizzard and Thunderbolt have to be must-haves. Because Blizzard's just your strongest move, just period. And then Thunderbolt, you kind of need for the Pokemon that are a big threat to you. AKA Blizzard, or not Blizzard, AKA Starmie, Slowbro, and Cloyster. Yeah, so actually these two are must-haves. You can't actually like go without them. But the rest of it's still pretty customizable. With, you know, like I said before, like mostly physical moves. Like Earthquake, Body Slam, and Hyper Beam. I'd rather go for Earthquake than Body Slam. Mostly because it also gives you a good, like, you know, damage against Gengar. Not to mention just overall just more base power. I would imagine it would be more useful when, like, you know, going against Chansey. And I personally don't think every Pokemon in Gen 1 needs to have Body Slam for the sake of having Body Slam. I think GOODRA is already good enough being a bulky mixed attacker that can hit hard on both sides. You don't really need it to be fishing for Body Slam paralysis. But that's just me. Like, if you think Body Slam is better, and by all means, go ahead and use it. I can definitely tell you it won't, like, harm you in any way. But as for the replays, GOODRA versus Tauros. Blizzard hits. Honestly, he takes it pretty well. And to my surprise, Body Slam does a little bit more. So, could go either way. However, Tauros is more likely to crit. But then again, GOODRA's base 80. So, honestly, like, he has a pretty decent chance to crit as well. So, yeah. And then with Snorlax versus GOODRA, I, honest to God, don't really know how to rank this. There are so many different Snorlax sets, so many different GOODRA sets. I don't really know. GOODRA is obviously just incredibly tanky. Reflect Wax, Amnesia Wax, those can be annoying. But also just full-on physical Snorlax can mess with GOODRA as well. But at the same time, GOODRA has the physical and special options to take down Snorlax. So, I guess could go either way. It doesn't really matter what set either one of them runs. They can either just get a lot of hits in on each other. Which is weird. It's very weird. Also, while the Chansey replay is rolling, while talking to you guys, I thought about it more. And I actually do think that the Slowbro matchup I don't need to cover anymore. Because now that I think about it, because GOODRA is just so, you know, like, especially defensive, and it has a pretty decent crit rate, it probably can beat Slowbro in a 1v1 with just fishing for Thunderbolts. So we'll have to update the tier list when we get to the end, when that's not that bad. As for Chansey and GOODRA, GOODRA can hit pretty hard. It can fish for crits, but at the same time, Chansey can paralyze it, and then just spam Soft Boiled or Ice Beam. So it's another could go either way. There's not much else to really say about it. And then with Alakazam, it's faster. If it gets a crit, it's really bad. And this is like maybe the one instance where maybe Earthquake is inferior to Body Slam. But even then, I'm not sure. Even though GOODRA could survive a few hits from Alakazam, I would imagine, even if the matchup could go either way, you would just rather avoid it, just because of how fast Alakazam is, and with Alakazam paralyzing you. Because GOODRA kind of does fear paralysis, mostly because of just being slower than Pokemon like Cloyster, which is kind of game over if you're slower than it. And then as for, I think this is... Well, speaking of Devil, what do you know? Thunderbolt 2 shots Cloyster. Blizzard also 2 shots GOODRA. So yeah, thank God GOODRA's faster. And this right here perfectly proves my point. Because look at that. Imagine if GOODRA was just a little bit slower. He would have been screwed. Now next up, I think this one is Executor. Yeah, there we go. I actually had to do a few replays because the first two actually had GOODRA critting Executor and Executor making it all the way down to the red. So that alone already gives GOODRA a huge advantage. Even if GOODRA does get like put to sleep or Eggy explodes, which by the way, Eggy's explosion brings GOODRA down to 17%. So this is a overall good matchup for GOODRA, I would say. Even though sleep could suck, same with special drops, and while explosion takes most of your health, overall, there's just way more ways for it to go right for GOODRA, and I just don't see any Executor player just staying in. So, it's not like the most like one-sided match ever though. I would probably just put it in good, in my opinion. And then when Gengar, even if Gengar does put GOODRA to sleep, it only really has Nightshade to really damage it. So overall, I'd probably call it a good matchup, in my opinion at least. We skipped some of them like Jolteon and Rhydon. Figured it didn't really matter, and I kind of convinced myself into saying that the Swirlbar matchup didn't matter. But we do have Jinx, and this one is, I'm just gonna call this unwinnable, because even if GOODRA were to hit Jinx with Fire Blast or Hyper Beam, I seriously doubt that it will OHKO, which means Jinx can either just put GOODRA to sleep or 2-hit KO with the Blizzard. So what does GOODRA really do to win the matchup exactly? I can't think of anything. But I do say that's only because of GOODRA and Jinx having a sweet move exactly. For this final replay, with Starmie, it's a much different story. Because Starmie only has Paralysis, which it can't really use on GOODRA because GOODRA's Thunderbolt just hits so hard. So you kinda have to use Blizzard. Which, don't get me wrong, hits very hard, 3-hit KOs GOODRA. But at the same time, you kinda need a crit in order to actually win the 1v1. Assuming like the GOODRA player doesn't get unlucky. Which I would not have expected, not gonna lie. But good for GOODRA though. Like, outside of Excalibur, I think he's like the best dragon type I've covered on this series so far. Which I'm proud of him. He deserves it. Nobody just change some of these. This should go in good matchups. And this should probably also go in good matchups. This Executor 2 probably. I think I was a little too hasty. But just to be fair, I'll put Alakazam in bad. Just because you probably would rather avoid the matchup, honestly. So here is the actual tier list now. And yeah, this is very good. Better than I would have expected. I would have expected a pure dragon type to still suffer from having a blizzard weakness. But GOODRA seems like he can hold his own pretty well. Which I wasn't expecting. But maybe you were. What do you think? For a while now, like I think one of my oldest like requests has been to do a Suian GOODRA. But I'm not glad I didn't. Because if this is how good regular GOODRA is, imagine another GOODRA with more defense, resists both psychic and normal, and isn't weak to ice. Yeah, Hisuian GOODRA would probably be too overpowered, and I'm glad I just went with regular GOODRA. What do you think? Do you think GOODRA would be OU? Or do you think, even though he's good, it can like be super tanky especially, he doesn't really have anything that really dominates? Meaning he wouldn't actually like, be superior to like anything else here. Or maybe he would. And what coverage would you use on GOODRA? And yeah, I think that's about it. Like, just let me know if you think GOODRA will be good in OU or not. Thank you all for watching. Join the Discord server, because, again, like, if you just talk about Pokemon you want to see on the channel, I might get interested and do the video immediately. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.